The Black Phone came out in 2021 and quickly became a horror hit, a movie that was creepy, emotional, and genuinely scary. Then in 2025, The Black Phone 2 arrived, continuing the story of Finny and Gwen, taking them to a winter youth camp haunted by the Grabber's lingering presence. And hi everyone, and welcome back to AustinPlus commentary, where today we are answering another sequel question, where today we are answering the question, should there be a Black Phone 3? I loved these movies. I really do like them. In terms of like the supernatural stuff, in terms of like the still slasher type stuff, it's such a good mix. So I thought I would talk about if there should be a Black Phone 3, because it's a conversation that's actually currently being taken place. Like, Black Phone, it is such a good movie and such a good sequel. So I am quite invested in the idea if they would do a Black Phone 3, or if it is not the best fit. But without further ado, let's get into it. The Black Phone had such a weird reception to start with until a lot more people actually started watching it and they realized why it was actually that good. The first Black Phone stood out because it wasn't just about jump scaring. It was more about how it blended the supernatural terror with real emotional stakes. A grounded story about trauma, fear, and surviving something that is unimaginably awful. It can be considered in real world scenarios, which is the unfortunate side, but obviously the supernatural stuff is where it gets in more to the horror movie story stuff. But that balance of human drama and horror is what made audiences really connect with this movie. That's important because the strength of the original isn't just how scary it is, it's the heart that it brings to the franchise. Which leads me on to why the Black Phone 2 really continued the story very, very well. The Black Phone 2 picks up 4 years after the events of the first movie, with Finny, Gwen, and their friend Ernesto investigating disappearances at the winter camp connected to the Grabber's haunting legacy when he was a kid, I believe, or a teenager, something like that. Even though the Grabber was physically killed, his haunting influence continues to affect Gwen through visions, blizzard, isolation, and psychological terror. Now, the sequel was phenomenal. The sequel kept the emotional tone of the first movie, added a new setting and supernatural elements, which resulted in a $132 million on a $30 million budget, and oh my god, it was so worth it. Now, Black Phone 2 was not exactly something people were expecting, because the Black Phone 2 suggested that the franchise's future was definitely not something that was, we didn't think we were getting a second one because of how the first one ended. But now, because of how the Black Phone 2 ended, people are wondering if there's going to be a Black Phone 3 following the same pattern. Now, here's where I get worried, because you're doing the same pattern, people get bored, and it just doesn't hit as well. But at the end of Black Phone 2, the story feels like it's almost closed, but not completely. The Grabber's spiritual threat was confronted, yet certain supernatural threads do remain unsolved, hinting at the possible continuation. It was even more telling because the director, Scott Derrickson, did say he would only pursue the third film if the story did deserve it, meaning it has to feel like more than just another sequel. It has to feel like another, epic fight, has to feel like another epic story in itself, because both of these stories, as much as they're in the same franchise, they're two completely different things and two completely different tones. He publicly stated that the third movie would require quality over quantity. Couldn't agree more. That's exactly where the second film's box office and reception matter. It proved audiences were still invested, but creative intentions are being very cautious. Why can't every other bloody franchise do that? Now, I do think a third film could work. A third Black Phone movie could work for a few reasons. The supernatural mythology is broader than just the Grabber, thanks to Gwen's visions and legacy of the Black Phone itself. Themes of trauma, inherited fear, and psychological hauntings rather than pure slasher horror open the story to a much deeper emotional ground. People have suggested doing what Grabber was like when he first became the Grabber in anthology shows similar to the It Welcome to Derry. The post-credit tease does suggest that there is a lingering danger and unanswered questions that naturally build towards just another story. And if a third film expands the universe without repeating the same beats, which is what every other person struggles with, exploring the phone's origins, the deeper spiritual connection, or a new central antagonist, it could feel more purposeful. Now, if we're going on the other end of things, why might a third film just not be necessary? There are real risks to doing a third film. That goes without saying anyway. Sequels often lose impact when they lean too much onto the familiar tropes instead of new ideas. Now, new ideas can be scary, and going back to what they know is obviously the easy route, but the director has already said he doesn't want to do that. And that this is where we need a good director. This is a very good director. The core emotional arc, Finney and Gwen's journey from trauma to empowerment, may already just feel complete by the end of Black Phone 2. So I think you'd need new characters, which is where I think that maybe the show might come in handy there. But horror franchises can stagnate when every installment must escalate instead of broadening the themes. Now, many horror sequels feel obligatory rather than essential, but just repeating what the fans expect instead of surprising them. Now, throwing it out here, I don't want them to do this, but this might be an idea that they go down as having, Finney is a loner, and then Gwen ends up having kids, and one of her kids gets the thoughts and sees the grabber. But I don't know if that would work.
I don't know.
Now, the financial and creative reality of these films are that the Black Phone has shown to still perform commercially and critically, even to now. It's still such a good trajectory. Reviews remain generally positive, but audiences' scores and box office trends suggest sequel fatigue can already start to set in quickly with this horror series. Now, another reason I bring this up is Scream 7. Wasn't the best received, and I haven't seen it yet, but the financial... It did do well in the box office, but apparently the reviews are all the way down. But more importantly, this director and the creative team are signaling that another film will only happen if the story genuinely warrants an exploration. And that's a good sign for terms of quality, but also means that the franchise isn't guaranteed to continue. Now, I'm fine with that. But I wouldn't mind to see something a bit different I think the grabber story, I think we need a bit more depth in terms of how we started. So, should there be a Black Phone 3? Yes, but only if the story can actually go somewhere new, like it did with Black Phone 2. Do not use the same characters. The third installment shouldn't just repeat the past or answer superficial questions. If it digs into the mythology, explores fear in a fresh way, and deepens the emotional stakes for characters we already care about, now that's when the sequel actually becomes a bit more worthwhile. But if it exists purely to capitalize on success, it risks diluting what made the Black Phone special in the first place, along with the Black Phone 2. Now, the answer isn't just simply yes and no, as I said, but it depends on whether the filmmakers can offer a story that deserves to be told. Now, one can truly build something new, not just another round of scares. And if the franchise has shown us anything, it's that depth, emotional resonance matter just as much as the horror genre does as well. But without further ado, folks, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you'll enjoy it, and comment if you would like to see a Black Phone 3 as well. But I hope you have an amazing day as always, and I'll see you all the next one. Bye!